That's what I call an automobile. Those beautiful lines, that wide windshield.
Hey, this guy is really enthused, George. You'd think he was talking about his best girl.
With lines like those, that new 55 car is my baby from now on.
I guess that statement probably covers all of our thinking, Fred. We've really got a car this year that will sell like ice cream on a hot July day.
You guys all look like you swallowed a canary. It's mighty easy to see you've just had a good look at the new 55 cars.
Right you are, Tech. And I can see we're going to have a rough time getting them to simmer down long enough to give them the service tips we were talking about earlier.
Service tips? Hey, look. Any car as beautiful as that one is going to get old Bill's loving care and attention.
A truer word you never spoke. And let me say this. In all my years as a mechanic, I've never...
Whoa, hold it. You'd better get talking mighty quick about service tips, George, before our friend here starts spouting a poem.
Right. And to open this service story and handle it right, let's talk about door handles.
Very punny, but you're right. Now let's see how you're going to handle it.
Well, in the first place, I think we'll all agree that the new door handles are far and away the most convenient handles we've had. For instance, you'll find this push-button type handle on the new Dodge and Plymouth models. This is the first time this type handle has been used, with a self-adjusting rotary latch. And the method of attaching the handle is different from last year. 2 attaching studs go through the door panel and are held by nuts on the inside of the door. To remove the handle, you remove the door trim panel. Then use a socket wrench to reach through access openings in the inner panel to remove the 2 stud nuts.
Well, just how does that push-button mechanism work, George?
Quite simply, Bill, when the button is pushed, the force is transmitted to the adjustable screw attached to the end of the push button and moves the release lever of the door lock, releasing the rotary latch.
Is the push-button adjustable, George?
Yes, the adjustable screw in the end of the button can be adjusted so it lightly contacts the release lever of the door lock when the button is in the fully released position. As you can see, Bill, the force required to push the button in is directly related to the amount of compression of the door weather strip. If the button pushes too hard, move the striker plate out slightly to relieve the compression of the weather strip.
But not enough to cause a water leak.
That's a good point to remember, Tech. Now let's have a look at the door handles found on Chrysler and DeSoto. This handle is what is known as the combined push-pull type. With this type, you have a flush handle that moves out to meet your hand when you press the button. Then you pull the handle to open the door. To remove this type door handle, it isn't necessary to remove the trim panel. The one attaching screw in the door flange is accessible when the door is open. After this screw has been removed, the door handle can be lifted slightly and slid from the spring clip, which retains the other end of the handle. When installing the door handle, care must be taken to avoid damaging the finish. Here's a chafing pad which I made from a piece of 10,000ths shim stock. It can be made from either copper, brass, or aluminum. Be sure there are no burrs on the edges that can scratch the paint. Here's how it works. Place the slotted portion of the chafing pad over the spring clip so that the opposite end protects the finish as the handle is slid into place. Then remove the pad by pulling it from underneath the handle. Install the attaching screw, and that's all there is to it.
Hey, George, Tech was saying there's something different about removing and replacing the remote control door and window regulator handles. What about it?
That's right, Bill. They are different. This year we have a new handle with a new method of attaching it to the shaft. The handle is held to the shaft by a spring clip instead of a pin. The clip locks into a groove in the shaft as the handle is pushed on, securing the handle to the shaft. To remove the remote control door handle or the window regulator handle, use this tool.
That tool is easy to make. There's a sketch of it in the reference book.
Always work the tool in from the left side, between the handle and the washer, with the crank handle down to push the clip from the groove in the shaft. As you push the tool in against the edge of the clip, pull the handle outward. As soon as the clip is released from the locking groove in the shaft, you can pull the handle off the shaft.
You'll find that tool mighty handy for removing the door trim panel, too. There's no chance of pulling the clips through the pad when you use this tool.
Yeah, I can see how it'd be a handy tool.
Well, that about covers the remote control door and window regulator handles. Now, let's see.
You better tell them about the gear shift selector linkage adjustment on cars that have the Power Flight transmission, George.
Right, Tech. With this type of linkage, the engine is permitted to move without affecting the adjustment of the linkage. And it's simpler to adjust. To make the adjustment, use a spring scale and pull the selector lever knob toward the left. It should require from 1 to 2 pounds of pull to move the selector lever away from the edge of the gate. This is the amount of tension the lever should have to hold it in position. If the tension is not right, adjust by loosening the bracket attaching screws and sliding the bracket right or left behind the instrument panel to get the proper tension. Then tighten the screws and recheck the tension. If the linkage needs adjusting, here's how to do it. First, be sure the selector lever is in the neutral position at the gate on the instrument panel. Then, see that the manual control lever on the side of the transmission is in the neutral detent position. That's the second detent from the rear. Next, loosen the lock nuts on each side of the swivel on the control rod, so the swivel is free to move on the rod. Now, push the control rod toward the dash to hold the selector lever tightly against the edge of the gate. At the same time, slide the swivel on the rod so the stud is a free fit in the control lever. Then, tighten the lock nuts. Then finish up by shifting the selector lever through all the ranges. The selector lever will touch the land of the gate in the neutral position, but will have a slight clearance between it and the lands in the other positions.
Well, that clears up the new transmission selector linkage. What's next? Brakes?
Aha! Now you're talking about something that's right down my alley. Lead on, George.
Brake adjustment at the wheels is the same easy operation, Fred, but there's a real new story on brakes aside from that. For one thing, the hydraulic brake master cylinder is now located on the engine side of the dash panel, where servicing is much easier. Remember how that suspended brake and clutch pedal mounting caught your eye, Fred?
I sure do, George. That's a great idea. Besides being easier to operate, dirt and road splash can no longer get into the passenger compartment through holes in the floor pan.
Notice how the inner end of the piston push rod projects through the dash panel and is connected to the brake pedal.
Right. That should make adjustment a lot easier.
It certainly does, Fred. Now, you want to remember that to ensure the full release position of the master cylinder push rod so the brakes don't drag, the brake pedal must have a designated amount of free play.
How much free play should it have, George?
The pedal should have a free travel of at least 5/64ths of an inch, and not more than 5/32, measured at the pedal pad.
The easiest way to check it is to measure the clearance at the stop bumper.
That's right, Tech. Push the pedal by hand. You can feel when the push rod contacts the master cylinder piston.
At that point, you should have a clearance of 15 to 30 thousandths measured between the pedal and the stop bumper on the bracket.
How do I make this pedal adjustment, George?
It's made at the push rod, up near the top of the pedal, Fred. Here's what you do. If the pedal travel isn't right, loosen the push rod lock nut and turn the piston push rod clockwise to decrease travel and counterclockwise to increase travel. When you get it right, tighten the lock nut.
What about brake pedal adjustment on these cars equipped with power brakes, George?
Well, Fred, in the first place, no free play adjustment is required.
No free play adjustment? How come?
Because the new power brake unit doesn't use the conventional master cylinder piston, Fred. Free play, pedal return spring, and pedal return spring stop features are built into the power brake assembly.
Hey, George, I've got a question. How come the clutch and the power brake pedals are on a different plane?
Hold it, George. Before you answer that, somebody better turn this record over.
Ask about the clutch and the power brake pedals being on a different plane, Fred. Here's why. The power cylinder push rod is connected to a bell crank instead of directly to the brake pedal. The pedal doesn't have to move as far as the regular brake pedal. Therefore, it doesn't have to return as far to give the same or more braking effectiveness.
That's why the pedals are not on the same plane. Don't try to make any adjustments to bring that pedal up.
Okay, Tech. I won't worry about it.
What about clutch linkage adjustments?
Well, Bill, on the 55 cars equipped with a manual shift transmission, the clutch pedal is suspended in the same manner as the brake pedal. The pedal free play is obtained by turning the rod adjusting nut until there is 3/16 of an inch of free travel at the outer end of the fork.
And this is the only adjustment for the clutch pedal.
Hey, George, I was noticing the door hinges on these 55 cars. With new type hinges, there must be a hinge adjustment story, right?
There sure is, Bill. Let's have a look at them. Let me start off by saying that these hinges still provide the same door movements for adjusting door alignment as before.
Yeah, but getting at the body half of these new hinges for the rear doors is a new story, George.
That's right, but it's very simple. You merely loosen or remove the trim panel from the center pillar. Then you can reach in through the opening in the pillar to reach the hinge screws.
That looks easy enough to me. What else is new along this line, George?
Well, I thought while we were talking about hinges, I might give you some of the features and the adjustments for the new Decklid Torsion Bar.
Torsion bar? Say, I was curious about that feature, George. Just how does it work?
It works on much the same idea as using the sway eliminator on the front end to control body sway on turns, Fred.
That's right, Fred. The torsion bars replace the hinge springs. As you can see, they balance the weight of the lid.
Right. And the deck lid will stay in any partially or fully open position if the tension is properly adjusted.
You'll notice there are two bars. One end of each bar has a roller which rides on the hinge. The other end is set into a stationary support. The lifting force comes from the amount of twist put into each bar.
Oh, I get it. Well, what about adjustments, George?
The torsion bar tension can be increased or decreased simply by shifting the bar into the next slot in the support to give more or less tension as needed. To shift the torsion bar from one position to another, use a wrench or this T-handle tool. Just hook the tool over the bar and lift it out of one slot and set it into the other.
And be mighty careful to get a good grip on that tool. You'll find that torsion bar's a mighty good muscle builder.
Right, Tech. You know you've got hold of something when you pull the bar out of the slot.
Well, that looks simple enough, George. Say, you know, I've heard a lot about these new tubeless tires, how they generate less heat, have longer life, how you get better traction and all that. They sound like the answer to a driver's prayer.
It certainly is a fine tire, Bill. In addition to the benefits you mentioned, there's less annoyance through puncture delay, and they're much easier to repair.
Easier to repair?
That's right, Bill. Take a look at this cutaway tire and rim. The cords are tempered for added strength and are bonded to the rubber compounds of the tire body. Air can't possibly leak through the carcass. In addition, the sealing ribs on the sides of the bead form an airtight seal against the rim flange of the wheel.
These tires give you an opportunity to offer a new service to your owners, Bill.
That's right. You see, these tires might pick up a nail or something, and the owner would never know it because the tire won't lose its air pressure. So when any car equipped with tubeless tires is in for service, we should inspect the tires. If a puncturing object is found in the tire, remove it and repair the tire. It may save the customer a delay later.
That's the stuff, George. And your owners will appreciate that service.
Just what is the story on repairs, George?
It's a very easy job to repair a puncture in one of these tires, Bill. In the first place, you don't have to remove the tire to make a simple puncture repair. In fact, you don't even have to deflate the tire. It's easier to fix a puncture while the tire is inflated than it is when it's flat.
That's right. In a majority of cases, all you have to do is plug up the hole with one of these live rubber plugs.
These plugs are available in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. A suitable cement and an installing needle make up the rest of the repair kit. When you pull the puncturing object out of the tire, pay close attention to the angle at which it went in.
That's mighty important. You've got to follow the same course when you put your rubber plug in.
Right, Tech. If you don't notice the path of the puncturing object, you may have to do considerable probing to find it. That means you may make a double hole, and the plug may seal only one. Then the tire would still leak. Dip the end of the needle into the cement and push it down through the path of the puncturing object. That gets cement in the hole and helps to lubricate the plug you're going to push in. To install the plug, select one that's at least twice the diameter of the puncturing object. Now roll the small diameter of the plug into the needle's eye, about 3/8 of an inch from the end of the plug. Dip the plug into the cement and quickly insert the plug into the hole. Use a firm, steady motion and make sure you follow the proper course. Push the plug through until about 2/3 of the tool has entered through the tire. That means the large diameter section of the plug has been drawn into the hole.
Pull the needle straight out, and the plug stays in the tire.
Then trim the plug about 1/8 of an inch above the tread, and you're ready to inflate the tire to the recommended pressure.
You mean that's all there is to it?
That's right, Bill. Of course, if the tire was punctured with an irregularly shaped object, the damaged area may be too big to be fixed by the plug.
Does that mean we can't repair the tire?
It certainly does not. Just take the tire off and put a patch on the inside. Instructions in the reference book tell you how to do that.
Well, I guess that's about all we have time for right now.
Hey, wait a minute, George. What about all the other features? When are you going to tell us about them?
We'll get together again soon to discuss those other features, Bill. I'm glad to see that both you boys are enthusiastic about the new 55 cars. You know, it's this kind of enthusiasm that makes a top-flight dealership. I know I can depend on you boys putting that enthusiasm to work when you make these new cars ready for delivery.
That's a mighty important point George just made. You don't want to overlook a thing that'll contribute to the appearance or performance of the new car.
A new owner is enthusiastic and proud of his new car. He tells his friends about it, and the word gets around. So make any words our owners speak good words for our work and for the dealership.
Right. And those good words, spread around among enough people, can make not only more sales, but more service business, too. And whatever way you look at it, that will benefit all of us.